okay, it has to be said like this. All you have to do is plan, 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 and plan.
Yeah, and once you're moving, don't try to stick to the plan too much. Be a little bit flexible. Things will not go your way.
Correct. That's the beauty of plans, right? They are there to tell you whether you're still pointed in the right direction,
Yeah.
how much deviation you've had from your original plan. So then you can make accommodations.
Yeah, and think about it. This is a mental exercise, okay? Let's say that you plan to get your hotel at 6 p.m. in the evening because of whatever reasons, and you planned that you will have 2 hours to freshen up before you go for dinner. And let's say something goes awry and you show up 3 hours later, okay? How much of a hassle you think this is how much of a hassle you think this is. If you say, hey, it happened. So dinner won't happen at 9, it'll happen at 10. Instead of getting 3 hours to freshen up, I'll get 2 and we are okay. Then everybody will be happy. But if you decide to throw a tantrum at this point,
Absolutely.
stamp your feet and say, what the hell, nothing is going to plan, then it'll look much worse. But in terms of reasoning, it has gone the exact same way in both cases. In both cases, you were 3 hours behind. The dinner was delayed by an hour in both cases, and you got less time to freshen up in both cases. You can make as much of a scene as you want.
Okay.
The less of a scene you make, the easier it becomes for everybody.
Yeah. And so I'm going to come back to plan because, again, destination, it's super important to keep this in mind. And we've lived through some of these instances where we were back when I was at Autocar. We were doing this non-stop India drive of some sort. It was in the Tata Indigo ECS. Okay. And the routes had been plotted. So it was like we were working in relays. We were picking up cars. And so it had been planned out. It had been mapped out. And so I was taking a shift from 4 a.m. as the cars were arriving at 3:30 or something like that. So 3:34 in the morning, taking the cars from Jammu, driving to Srinagar and coming back, right? So they had been plotted by kilometer per hour.
Right.
Right? इतने किलोमीटर हैं तो इतने घंटे में पहुंच जाओगे, इतने घंटे में वापस आ जाओगे. Now in this story, both the factors came into play, right? One was terrain, right?
Yeah.
In the mountains, your average speed disappears. It literally disappears,
Correct.
right? You're in completely unpredictable environments. So that entire plan went for a toss, right? We didn't get to Srinagar until sundown. We had left at 4 o'clock in the morning. Distance wise, it was nothing, right?
Yeah.
Whatever it is from Jammu to Srinagar, the
Yeah.
distance is, I think, must be 200, 300 kilometers, whatever it is, right? So, as per the guide, I mean, whatever plan was made, you'll reach there by afternoon, you'll be back by night, late night, whatever, you'll be back. We got to Srinagar at Dal Lake at sundown, right? And then on the way back was snow. So we were stuck there, okay? We were in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
We were parked in our cars by the highway because the road was closed, right? So again, this is a very simple thing to overlook. You will plan your travel, say that I can do these many kilometers, right? But in different terrain, in different conditions, different kinds of roads, you'll do different distances. Also, like Shumi was saying, how many kilometers you cover in a day, right? Will be dependent on who you are as an individual and your family,
Yep.
right? And very often you will at the start I think you will find a place where you will get comfortable. At the start, is it the point to do the longest days then? I'm not so sure, right?
It depends on the family.
Correct. Right? So that also you should know. Like you might be like, okay, I've got easy, like, let's say you're driving from, let's do the usual one, right? From Pune, you're going up to Leh, right?
Yeah.
So the distance that you travel from Pune to Delhi is the easiest part.
Is the easiest part.
Right? So it's going to be a no stress travel. You can easily punch in more kilometers, right? It should be okay with your family because the roads are going to be largely good, right?
Yeah.
So you can do longer days then and then do shorter days later. So again, you've taken terrain into consideration. You've taken your family mood also into consideration. Let's say you know that people it's summer, it's hot, people don't like the heat. Make shorter days.
Yeah.
Plan for it that way,
Yeah.
right? And the difference is going to be a day at the most here or there in these longer trips.
Yeah.
And it would do well for you to even factor in a spare day in between. Saying ki, I have a buffer.
Just in case.
Just in case I need to adjust a little bit here or there, you can do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the other thing about going to destinations now which are a little out of the way, especially if you're driving not just diesels or petrols, if you're doing longer distances. Now with diesels, newer cars, you'll need the diesel exhaust fluid. Carry some extra in the car. You don't know when and where it will be available.
You might need to add blue at some point.
Yeah. And For turbo petrol engines, some of them consume more oil. So that these are the things that you then plan and say, if I'm going to somewhere which is a little out of the way, in fact, forget out of the way or not. If you're traveling longer distances, just keep some with you. You don't want to go looking for a mechanic at some random point saying ki oil
But
hai kya?
you know what I do instead? I just make sure that the bike is worthy to travel just before the trip.
Correct.
So my Ducati has annual service intervals. But if I'm traveling on a long trip, then I completely ignore the service interval and I say I'm leaving Thursday. I will give you the bike about a week before that. You take 3 full days. You check all my major nuts and bolts. You retalk all of them.
He's got lots of nuts and bolts. Anyway,
Many of them are loose, under-talked. Then you top up all the fluids. And if I can't remember, for example, when the last time the brake fluid was topped up, which I do every year, top it up.
right.
Flush it, clean it, put fresh fluid. So I know that this bike is technically ready for the Ducati service interval is 15,000 kilometers. So I know that the bike is ready for 15,000 kilometers of going without any major intervention being required.
Correct.
Am I mechanically skilled enough to fix this bike? No. Can I make a phone call and have somebody talk me through fixing some minor things? I can. But between the fact that the bike was just thoroughly checked, and you always tell the service guys going for a long trip, you be extra cautious with it. They always are.
Correct.
Good mechanics will always be extra cautious when you say, I'm leaving town, I'll be in the middle of nowhere for a long
So there's
time.
a very nice acronym for this. Bet. Don't take a bet. Right?
Yeah.
Don't bet on bet. Battery, engine, tires.
Correct.
Right? So it's a must check.
Yeah, so I know that when I depart in the morning on the first day of that trip, no matter how long the trip is, I have no mechanical worries, and whatever might happen will be totally unexpected. Right? And in 23 years of traveling, 25 years of traveling, more or less alone, about 1,000,000 kilometers in total, including all my commuting and everything, have I ever been stranded on the side of a highway looking for help? No. I have had to make one phone call in all of those years where the old Ducati had a small, where I was trying to establish, is it serious enough for me to have to stop and call RSA? Or is it so simple that I can just continue riding and topping up oil as I went along?
Okay.
Turns out it was so much of the latter that when we showed up in Hyderabad and they didn't have the spare, even they said, sir, it is
Just
leaking
keep
so
topping.
slowly, you just keep going, you go to Bombay and get it fixed. It's not a crisis.
Right. Shumi is always like that. He's always kidding around and also dead serious. There's a lot more of that style of conversation on the main MotorInc channel, so head out and catch the full conversation.